let's take a look at the custom cables. So for the PCIe, there are always a lot of options for this. I mean, I couldn't have gone straight down vertically because, I mean, if there was a hole like that in alignment with these, you'd be able to. But the other main option for me was to bring them both into the middle together and, you know, then run them together all the way back to the power supply. But I don't know, this just seemed to work out better. There's so much symmetry and so much straightness in the loops that I wanted to create some curves somewhere. And so I decided to take this option for the PCIe cables. 24 pin, quite standard, has a little bit of a curve in it. We have some nice short SATA data cables here, which allowed us to get straight into the storage around the back, which is very close to the connectors, thanks to a mod that I always like to do to these Caselabs cases. I think they're only 100 millimeters long, those SATA data cables. And then we have the ATX and EPS at the top here, also curving. These two here are for the two pumps, RPM, PWM control. They are EK D5 PWM pumps. So I have them running off the CPU fan header and the CPU OPT fan header. And I have them running on the standard profile. And then down here we have the front panel connectivity, USB, which is going to the fob work. And you've seen how I do my fans with the splitters. These splitters are running direct to the power supply via Molex. There's no control, they're just running at 100% because there's no Aquero in this build. But this is very clean. You can access it by just removing this panel here, and then you can get straight into it. And that's the same at the top here. You remove this panel and you can get straight access directly to the splitter. But let's take a look around the back. So you can see the back is so empty. There's really not a lot going on back here without the radiators and without the usual installation of storage in this area here. But for this build I decided to include a Molex splitter because we just didn't have enough Molex because we're running so many things off Molex. So here we have the two pumps, this one, and then this is running to the fan splitter down here for the lower radiator. And this one here is running to the fan splitter on the upper radiator, and then it's powered directly back to the power supply. You have the front panel cables there. Then running across the bottom here we have the RPM and PWM cables, which go all the way up to the top of the motherboard under the 24 pin there. That cable just there is just the Molex to power the top radiator fans. And then we have three separate 90-degree SATA power cables which run directly to the power supply from the two SSDs and the hard drive. So that works out really clean. And you can see where the nice short SATA data cables connect. They just wrap around and go straight in. So that worked out really well. We have the two PCIe running through here. We have the 24 pin, which I've just used a single cable tie on this comb here, and I've tied it to one of these. Because there's one missing on the 24 pin, it's not actually 24 wires, it's 23. I've just put the cable tie through it and then through the loop here. This power supply is a little bit noisy. It's an AX1200 gold, so it's very old. The fan actually makes a little bit of a noise, but all of the components for this build were actually secondhand. There's only a few new components, the case and the liquid cooling components, but the core components were secondhand. This is a rebuild and upgrade. So then we have the EPS and ATX in the corner there, and we have the fob work over here, which has the single LED strip connected. And I actually connected the two temp sensors to the fob work because it has 4 extra temp sensors. So that's what you can see on that right hand side there. Those temp sensors are connected to plugs which are going into the backs of the pump tops hidden. So that worked out really nicely to give us the temperatures of both of the loops. And I'm actually going to add an ambient in there as well. That's the last addition that I need to add to this build, an ambient temp sensor on the fob work. So a lot of people were wondering about these parallel loops and how they would actually perform. So you can see the temperature results there. It's basically fairly standard compared to any other system that I've built previously. It's really made not much of a difference, although it would if the flow of the pumps was not high enough. If you're going to do this many components in parallel, 3 per loop, including the radiators, then you really need to run the pumps at 100% all of the time. Otherwise, you are certainly going to have performance problems, or at least if you are going to run pump RPM control, base it on temperatures that definitely directly apply to those loops.